There are no shadows in the Underdark. Only after years on the surface have I come to understand the significance of that seemingly minute fact, the significance of the contrast between light and darkness. There are no shadows in the Underdark, no areas of mystery where only the imagination can go. What a marvelous thing is a shadow. I have seen my own silhouette walk under me as the sun rode high. I have seen a gopher grow to the size of a large bear, the light low behind him spreading his ominous silhouette far across the ground. I have walked through the woods at twilight, my gaze alternating between lighter areas and catching the last rays of day, leafy green slipping to gray, and darkened patches where only my mind's eye could go. Might a monster be there? An orc or a goblin? Or might a hidden treasure, as magnificent as a lost, enchanted sword, or as simple as a fox's den, lay within the sheltering gloom? When I walk the woods at twilight, my imagination walks beside me, heightening my senses, opens my mind to any possibility. But there are no shadows in the Underdark, no room for fanciful imagination. All, everywhere, is gripped in a broadening, continual predatory hush and a real, ever-present danger. To imagine a crouched enemy or a hidden treasure is an exercise in enjoyment, a conjured state of alertness. But when that enemy is too often real and not imagined, when every jag in the stone, every potential hiding place becomes a source of tension, then the game is not so much fun. One cannot walk the corridors of the Underdark with his imagination beside him. To imagine an enemy behind a stone might well blind a person to the very real enemy behind another. To slip into a daydream is to lose that edge of readiness, and in the Underdark, to be unwary is to die. This proved the most difficult transition for me when I went back to those lightless corridors. I had to again become the primal hunter, surviving every moment on that instinctual edge, a state of nervous energy that kept my muscles taut, always ready to spring every step of the way. The present was all that mattered, the search for potential hiding places of potential enemies. I could not afford to imagine those enemies. I had to wait for them and watch for them, react to any movements. There are no shadows in the Underdark. There is no room for imagination in the Underdark. It is a place of alertness, but not aliveness, a place with no room for hopes and dreams. The Underdark, deep earth, the realms below, the night below, the lightless lands. Surface dwellers refer to the maze of tunnels and caverns beneath their feet by these names and many more. I have heard that other worlds are not nearly as honeycombed with tunnels as the one in which I was born, but I can only speculate as to the reasons why. For eons, earthquakes, volcanoes, and great rivers of water have cleared caverns and chasms in the bedrock. Creatures such as purple worms, umber hulks, Zorn burrowed tunnels through earth and stone in search of mineral and prey. Beholders disintegrate columns of stone. Dwarves, gnomes, and other races mine for gold, jewels, and other precious treasures. They reroute subterranean rivers and transform the realm of Durmithion and Calderon through feats of engineering. The weave has undoubtedly played a crucial role in the deep earth, for vast cavern networks suddenly appear from time to time, leaving pockets of Underdark radiation known to the Drow as Phasris in their wake, and races flourish. The Underdark is a world unto itself, a nightmarish labyrinth, filled with horrors unimaginable to those who bathe in the daily light above. While nature has certainly taken root in the tunnels that crisscross Aberturel, deep earth is dominated by malevolent beings whose ancestors, including my own, fled the purifying light of day for the cloaking darkness of eternal night. Despite their differences, however, the worlds above and below Shantor's gossamer robe are intricately linked. Some who dwell in the realms above seek to explore the landscape beneath, trade with its inhabitants, and plunder the riches of its strange terrain. For the very same reasons, some who dwell in the realms below venture to the world above. The events of the past dozen years, especially the war between Menzoberranzan and the allied forces of Mithril Hall, and the emerging alliance between Larar and Blinding Stone have forged new ties between the bright realms of the north and the night below. The south, whence the ancestors of Clan Battlehammer emigrated, have long been intertwined with the remnants of Deep Shanatar. To the east and west lie unknown realms above and below the surface, but I suspect that they too are more tightly linked than the inhabitants of either would realize. For those who would delve into the wonders and terrors of the Underdark, I offer this guide to the world I escaped but never left behind.
Getting in and getting out. Before embarking on an expedition into the Underdark, one must discover a way down, and, more important, back up. Finding routes usually requires deep research. Not every cave connects with the Underdark, just as not every upward sloping tunnel breaches the surface. Ruins, dungeons, and tombs are good starts. Many subterranean complexes were originally constructed by dwarves, and the stout folk often link their holds through a network of pre-existing tunnels. Even dungeons built by those ignorant of the Underdark sometimes link to it, for denizens of the deep are as likely to tunnel up in search of treasure as surface dwellers are to delve down. Magical transport is another way to reach the Underdark. Although less effective or reliable than one might wish, for reasons not well understood, Phasdress inhabits and distorts movement spells such as Dimension Door, Teleport, and Teleport Without Error. Spells from the School of Divination and magical scrying devices are also affected, although these effects are far less well understood. Furthermore, the effects of Phasdress on magical transport go beyond the immediate environs of such sources. Casters employ such spells only at great personal risk, even if the destination is well known. Generally, teleport magic does not reliably operate beyond a half mile. To confuse the issue, some Underdark regions allow spells to function more or less as expected. Explorers who seek safer magical transport into the Underdark are advised to find permanent gates that seem to function even near Phasdress. Be warned, however, that gates are few and far between. Known gates are usually well defended on both sides. Escaping the Underdark is often more challenging than one might think. Even experienced explorers are easily lost. Maps and trails markers are generally less effective than above ground, as the very walls can move or disappear, and one cannot look to the stars for course correction. Magical navigation aids are highly recommended, including arrows of direction, known direction spells, and scrolls of mapping. Small, almost unnoticed tremors can wreak unexpected havoc on a planned return route, as can the deliberate or indifferent actions of burrowing creatures. Explorers are well advised to equip themselves with magical means of tunneling, such as dig spells or spades of colossal excavation. The enveloping darkness. The first challenge of the Underdark is the lack of light. For races adapted to life below ground, the ability to sense heat amply compensates for poor illumination. However, many surface dwellers, including humans and some halflings, are essentially blind in the Underdark. Alestro was kind enough to provide Capri with an enchanted cat's eye agate for a trip to Menzoberranzan. It enabled her to see as well as a drow or a dwarf. Some wizards have access to spell formulas such as improvision that create similar helpful enchantments. Enchanted hotstones crafted by the Svirfneblin enhance the range of vision by radiating heat reflected off the surrounding stone, providing the infravisual equivalent of a torch. Magical solutions such as these have the obvious benefit of not spoiling an ally's infravision. Although light sources in the Underdark draw attention, most inhabitants cannot tolerate strong light and keep their distance. Also, mobility and awareness are critical in the subterranean environment. Beings primarily reliant on sight to navigate have no chance of survival when blind. However, should your torch or lamp die, be prepared for a sudden attack from the fading shadows. Torches fashioned on the surface for the night hours are commonly made from dry wood soaked in pitch, but any flammable substance will suffice. If torch supplies run low in an Underdark environment, certain varieties of toadstool, identified by their deep purple caps known as torch stalks, provide a good, slow-burning alternative. Be aware that a few varieties of torch stalk are explosive when burned, releasing a cloud of spores that can slowly kill an individual if inhaled. In some cases, dangerous torch stalks can be identified by the bones on the surrounding cavern floor. remnants of the carrier and fertilizer. Unfortunately, in many cases the bones have been carried off by other predators, leaving no hint of the danger. Other sources of fuel are dried roth, dung, and bat guano, which burn well but smell like shit. Carrying a large supply of torches or oil is impractical for extended expeditions into the Underdark. So many explorers rely on magical illumination. Be forewarned, however, that such stormers can easily be dispelled or countered. An apocryphal tale often repeated in the Waterhaven Tavern known as the Yawning Portal speaks of an arrogant human wizard who relied solely on his spells for light during an extended Underdark expedition. He had to extend his entire roster of spells and got separated from his companions during a melee with a Drow patrol. The wizard found himself alone in the darkness, still carrying a spellbook, but unable to read it to rememorize a continual light spell. Not all the Underdark lives in blackness, of course. The rocks containing Phasris emit eerie blue and green light. Luminescent lichen, fungi, and mosses light many subterranean grottos. Although most varieties quickly fade if disturbed or removed, one species commonly cultivated by the Darrow is blue glowfan fungi, which glows for several hours after being disturbed. The Darrow also consume blue glowfan fungi. It is poisonous, however, to other races. Ormu is a fluorescent green moss that grows in damp tunnels and steamy caverns, usually near geothermal steam vents. Drow females often employed this moss in powdered form as eyeshadow. When mixed with glowworm juice, it forms a luminescent paint used for heraldic symbols and for scribing magical scrolls and tomes. Baruchis, also known as crimson splitters, are fungi that glow cherry red. If disturbed, they release a cloud of deadly spores that kill almost any creature except for the worm-like grubbers that feed on them. A related but more insidious issue for surface dwellers in a subterranean environment is the lack of their accustomed means of noting the passage of time. The sun does not rise or set, nor can one note moon phases or constellation drift. Tales speak of explorers who lost their way for just a few days, yet emerged claiming to have spent weeks or years below. The lack of familiar timepieces can create problems with identifying time to eat, sleep, or pray. Since ferrying a never-wintering water clock into the Underdark is impractical, most explorers turn to common subterranean measures. For example, Drow sentinels often measure the length of their duty tours by counting the number of times a stone basin is tilled by a constant trickle of water, emptying water into their water skins every time the basin is ready to overflow. Upper Underdark inhabitants measure days by observing when bats exit and return. Drow patrols often coordinate ambushes by counting hand fades, a unit of time based on how long it takes heat to dissipate from a rock after briefly placing one's hand on it. Subterranean landscapes. Above ground vegetation, rivers, bodies of water, and mountain peaks slow travel. The Underdark has these, and more uniquely subterranean impediments. Passages twist and turn rarely in a constant direction or on a level floor. Tunnels vary in height and width, sometimes striking down to a crack or widening to great grottos. Rivers and lakes can fill entire caverns. Vast patches of deadly plants and fungi block miles of passage. Because of these impediments, sometimes a direct route between here and there simply does not exist. In the Underdark, a traveler must prepare for all sorts of three-dimensional terrain. Climbing on slick, brittle, and sharp rock faces requires reliable aid. Underdark explorers need great skill in rock climbing, or even better, the ability to levitate or fly. Pack animals must navigate such terrain as well. While surface-dwelling dwarfs sometimes use mules, most major Underdark races employ riding lizards, steeders, or subterranean lizards in lieu of horses, oxen, and wagons. Rivers and subterranean lakes are rarer obstacles, but often serve as the most efficient means of travel. Many deep delvers ferry small boats into the tunnels below or build them from giant mushrooms. Magical treasures, such as folding boats, are highly prized. The lack of wind usually makes sailing craft useless, so most vessels are rowed or towed by aquatic draft animals, often a cavern ceiling dips below the water's surface, requiring the explorer to creatively navigate the cold and dark waters. Necessities of life. The Underdark is like a desert scattered with oases. All the basic necessities of life, food, water, air, and shelter are in short supply, and the competition to survive is brutal. Most surface dwellers are accustomed to a diet of meat, cheese, fruits, vegetables, and grains. Subterranean fare is similar, but with important differences. Domesticated deep broth are common in the Underdark, as almost every part of these cattle is useful, in addition to the meat and milk they provide. Cave pigs are also used for food and clothing, and wild deep broth herds are occasionally found too. Fungi, lichen, molds, and mosses replace most agriculture produce, and some are used to brew alcohol. For example, the stalk of Trimelac, an edible mushroom that tastes somewhat like bread, can be eaten after cleaning it, soaking it in water for an hour, and drying it by a fire. When Nimmergan, a giant mushroom species, is sealed in a cask and left to die, a parasitic fungus consumes it and forms a drinkable fermented liquid, also called Nimmergan. Nonetheless, surface dwellers are advised to bring their own provisions, for many fungi, lichens, molds, mosses are poisonous or capable of defending themselves. Priests who can magically create food are a welcome alternative to foraging. Fresh water is scarce in some regions of the surface world, but it is more precious than gold in the Underdark. Like food, magically created water is an invaluable resource to explorers. Deep earth denizens get no rain, so they rely on rivers, lakes, and seepage through the rocks for water. Every permanent Underdark community has access to a permanent water supply, and disruption of a water supply leads to quick action. While most subterranean waterways are freshwater, saltwater sometimes breaches near or beneath seas. For this reason, few Underdark communities settle beneath seabeds. However, deep-sea creatures sometimes create unique ecosystems, such as in the fabled Sea Dark, a subterranean sea beneath the eastern Sea of Fallen Stars, and the Altumble Peninsula. Linked to the water above by three great trenches, the Sea Dark is home to aquatic beholderkin and the eel-like Anguiliians. Another hazard is the scarcity of breathable air. Most populated Underdark caverns are sufficiently ventilated, but not always by surface connection. Denizens of my native environment are well aware of fireweed, a heat-absorbing plant that converts heat into food and foul toxins into breathable air. Fireweed makes volcanic regions survivable, and lifeless tunnels relatively fertile. Surface dwellers who deliberately or unwillingly damage stands or fireweed are quickly dispatched by the plant. A different tactic employed by the Svirfneblin involves using puffball salamanders as a means of detecting bad air. These small, harmless creatures swell up like a bullfrog when air starts to go bad. By keeping a close eye on a caged puffball salamander, Underdark explorers can buy a few minutes to escape before being overcome by toxins. Basically a canary in a coal mine operation. Although the Underdark seemingly supplies innumerable shelters, explorers are advised to choose carefully. Shelters here are chosen for defensive reasons, not for protection from the elements. Multiple escape routes are vital, for many creatures burrow through solid stone. As deep earth inhabitants are more accustomed to battling in tight confines, I recommend surface dwellers seek defensible plateaus in large caverns, selecting terrain akin to their normal environment. The endless hunt. I survived a decade alone in the wilds of the Underdark, only by becoming a hunter in both body and mind, a wild beast of the lightless lands, as cunning and deadly as any who stalked those tunnels. Even then, only the aid of Guenhwyvar kept me sane. Generally, the civilized inhabitants of Deep Earth stick close to their inn caves, venturing forth only in groups to patrol, mine, or trade. In the wilds, heed any sign of recent activity. Predators tend to haunt well-traveled routes. Scavengers tend to lurk in such regions as well, much as jackals shadow the mighty lions of the Shar. At the same time, tunnels that appear unused usually are unused for good reasons. Even passive creatures in the Underdark defend themselves and their territory with deadly ability. As in the world above, monsters tend to leave evidence of their presence. Spores, heat signatures, broken cave formations, and disturbed fungi are all signs to the weary traveler. The Underdark is disturbingly silent for someone accustomed to the murmur of life above. But echoes travel far, alerting all manner of beings. When I was in the academy at Menzoberranzan, I learned early on to solve the riddle of an echo pattern and locate its source, although not always quickly enough. The Drow walk lightly and employ boots of elvenkind to mask their passage. We employ a sophisticated language of hand signals to obviate the need for speech in dangerous environs. Spells that generate magical silence or sound bubbles also suffice. The well-known priest spell that generates magical silence in a 15-foot radius also has the unfortunate drawback of preventing external sounds from reaching the cloaked individuals, so beware. Subterranean patrols, mining expeditions, and trading casters are always equipped to defend themselves. Scouts lurk in the vanguard and rearguard as any such group, on the alert for attacks from any direction, even above and below. Patrols usually separate into smaller bands to prevent foes from trapping them in a narrow tunnel or dead-end passageway. Ambushes and counter-ambushes are common, and hit-and-run tactics are the norm. A favorite Drow tactic is to levitate near a cavern ceiling while cloaked in magical darkness. Mining expeditions are particularly dangerous, for they generate a great deal of noise and must be defensible. Dwarves and Svirfneblin always establish traps and blinds in the surrounding tunnels before excavating, and they keep numerous escape routes ready. Although not constrained to a single location, caravans must ply regular routes navigable by their draft animals and/or slaves. Most successful caravan masters hire 2 or 3 patrols to accompany their expeditions, leading or trailing them, and would-be raiders sometimes never even see the target before being destroyed by the accompanying patrols. Caravans are most vulnerable when navigating treacherous terrain. Smart cavern masters establish a range of defensible fortifications similar to those employed by miners before continuing their journey. All this preparation makes trade an expensive prospect in the Underdark. The realms below. Although conceivably one could pass within a few feet of a teeming Underdark enclave without knowing it, such an occurrence is rare. Like the cities above, subterranean settlements show signs of nearby population. Patrols, caravans, and mining operations are common, and few deep earth races allow interlopers to approach without challenge. Not every settlement welcomes members of other races, and those that do generally admit only those who arrive as slaves or merchants. As a Menzoberranzan noble, I was largely insulated from the ebb and flow of commerce, but a few hard truths became apparent after several decades of casual observance. Underdark merchants ensure their continual freedom and lives by taking many precautions. The most basic defense is to make it more costly to seize wares than to purchase them. A would-be buyer often tests a merchant's defenses before concluding a transaction. Merchants tend to ally into casters, fellowships, and companies to make such attacks more costly. Despite the dangers, trade is the lifeblood of many isolated Underdark enclaves, and merchants increase their security by establishing regular clients. Visitors must be well versed in the mores of the local culture, for offending a matron mother, for example, is a quick, messy way to end one's life. In general, explorers from the surface world are wise to confine themselves to the upper Underdark, where a reasonable amount of interaction with the world above still exists. The middle Underdark is the domain of the main Underdark races, but these mostly see beings from the surface as slaves. The lower Underdark remains largely unknown. Truly alien societies thrive there with cultures wholly incomprehensible to surface dwellers. I have spent little time there myself, and would not recommend it to anyone else. Of course, I would not recommend you travel into the Underdark at all.
Underdark civilizations. I have walked the wilds of the Underdark for countless unseen sunrises, and in all the world never have I met a predatory species as dangerous as those who dwell in the bastions of so-called civilization that have grown up in the depths of the night below. Impenetrable lurker, sword and smith, deep song, herald of the night's fallen, year of the remembering stones, 1153 DR. While a thin veneer of familiarity cloaks Underdark enclaves, most are alien, nightmarish cousins of the cities found above. Whereas on the surface, civilized races live in settlements of varying sizes, the perils of the Underdark are such that few individuals or groups survive outside a fortress city. The Underdark is more akin to an archipelago in a dead sea than a temperate habitat with bountiful resources. As such, underground beings tend to live close together, founding their cities in the scattered handful of caverns capable of supporting life. There, they fiercely defend themselves against all challengers. Above cities grow as sentient beings come together for mutual defense, social interaction, or trade. Below, these familiar trappings are twisted by the psychology that the dark labyrinth tunnels impose, the unending struggle for scarce resources, and racial histories of exile and bitterness. By nature, most Underdark cultures turn in on themselves. Veneration of evil powers flourish, and cruelty reigns unchecked. Most Deep Realm cities are xenophobic enclaves dominated by one or two races that wage genocidal war on their neighbors, practice extensive slave trading, and rule through intolerant monotheistic theocracies. Only an elite minority of Underdark city dwellers dare to travel the tunnels between civilizations, and rare are the civilizations that grow beyond a single city-state for any significant length of time. A wide range of sentient beings have established cities in the Underdark. Although the diversity of intelligent life does not yet match that found on the surface, many established races of the Underdark are not native. Instead, their ancestors were driven underground as punishment for hideous crimes. Others immigrated voluntarily, and a few are believed to have evolved in the endless darkness. Of these races, 9 stand out due to their cultures and interaction with the surface world: Aboleth, Beholders, Cloakers, Drow, Dwarves, Illithids, Ixzan, Kuo-toa, and Svirfneblin. They are by no means the most powerful, even the most prolific races in the Underdark, but these have been the most prominent and deadly in recent centuries. Aboleth. Aboleth are loathsome, lawful evil amphibians resembling plump fish. 20 feet long from their bulbous heads to their fluke-like tails, most have blue-green bodies with gray splotches. Pinkish tan underbellies conceal a toothless, rubbery mouth. 3 red eyes like slits protected by bony ridges sit in a column on the front of their heads. 4 pulsating dark blue orifices line the bottom of their bodies and secrete gray slime that smells like rancid grease. 4 leathery tentacles, each 10 feet in length, grow from their heads. Aboleth are as difficult to look at as they are to deal with. In water, Aboleth propel themselves with their tails. On land, they use their tentacles to drag themselves along. The tentacles have another function too, transforming land dwellers into semi-aquatic beings. At touch, a victim's skin becomes clear and slimy, requiring near constant immersion. Fortunately, Aboleth naturally release a mucus cloud when submerged that enables land dwellers to breathe underwater. Unfortunately, this is a land dweller's hook into slavery. Using natural psionic talents, these monsters can create realistic illusions, complete with audible, olfactory, and other sensory components. In addition, they use psionics to enslave other creatures and communicate telepathically. About 2% of the population, notable for their bony ridges, protect their oversized craniums and calcified nodules along their usually tough tentacles, possess the exceptional mental gifts to become savants. Savant Aboleth are even more effective than their kin in mental domination. They are also powerful wizards, priests, and capable of spellcasting and creating magical symbols through psychokinetic forces. Savant Aboleth typically attain to 14th level as wizards and up to 12th level as priests. The origins of Aboleth are lost in the midst of primordial time, but they are believed to have been evolved to their present state in the deepest Underdark, perhaps shaped by dark primeval powers long forgotten by other races. Aboleth acquire all of their parents' knowledge at birth, plus the knowledge of any intelligent being they consume. Thus they hold countless ancient secrets of their own past as well as those of many other races they have devoured. Savant Aboleth use a complex symbol system for all written communication. Purloined fragments of these writings provide the only lore regarding the mysterious and horrific beings that have passed into the hands of other races. Great Aboleth cities as well as savant Aboleth who rule them are found only in the deepest Underdark. But individual common Aboleth are sometimes encountered in the aquatic settings in the upper and middle Underdark. Although the Aboleth are the unchallenged rulers of the lower Underdark across Faerun, their dominance is felt most in the eastern and southern reaches of the continent beneath the oldest human kingdoms. For millennia they have existed unchallenged and unchanging, slowly bringing more and more beings under their control. Cabals of savant Aboleth organize and run Aboleth societies as rulers and dominators. They rarely leave their cities, sending ordinary Aboleth to capture slaves and collect food. In some communities, a single savant Aboleth rises above its peers and assumes the title of Grand Savant. But even a Grand Savant power is never absolute. Savant Aboleths make decisions through consensus. Engaging in prolonged debates through telepathic communication, they rarely act hastily. Savant Aboleth are always hungry for magical items and lore. They share their mastery of magical skills and their knowledge of dark arcane secrets with each other through long periods of telepathic communication. Although they need not memorize wizard spells, regaining them automatically through rest, savant Aboleth are believed to be able to exchange spells and thus slowly alter their roster of available magic. The greatest savants are capable of wizardry to rival the most powerful archmages, but their skills at producing glyphs and magical symbols are believed to be the vessel of their most powerful magical manipulations. While some Aboleth venerate Gunadar, particularly in its aspects as Jubilex the Slime Lord, most common Aboleth and all savant Aboleth worship Pisathekis, the Blood Queen. The wizard priests who make up her clergy ruthlessly follow her creed of dominance and oppression. Aboleth cities are typically found at the bottom of great subterranean lakes up to 300 feet below the water's surface. Aboleth can survive far deeper, but few of their surface-dwelling slaves can join them without magical protection from the pressure and cold. Such cities are composed of great stone towers of different heights, although most are 1 or 2 stories with smooth, fluted, spiraling contours that appear evil and alien, yet strangely beautiful. Many walls have arabesque decorations with what appear to be rubbery tentacle fronds covered with a thin coat of slime. Ceilings range from 10 to 25 feet in height. Typical building decor includes murals, urns, vases, and statuettes set in alcoves created by fluted internal walls. An Aboleth dwells alone in its towers. Aside from its slaves, the grandest towers are inhabited by savant Aboleth. Slaves are typically barracked in the upper reaches of such towers. Great sloping ramps replace the curved stairs found in analogous surface structures, and most portals are intricately carved archways. Although their cities only occupy a fraction of any given Underdark lake, Aboleth literally dominate all intelligent life in the vicinity, extending their rule throughout a lake and the surrounding caverns. As a result, few other races willingly reside near an Aboleth city. Those that do are small and thoroughly dominated. Aboleth consume nearly any organic matter, deriving most of their substance from algae and microorganisms. They rely on their natural weaponry, magic, psionic skills for most of their food, so they have little need for agriculture, animal husbandry, mining, smithing, or other civilized activities. However, Aboleth do maintain great kelp farms and deep-growth herds to sustain their slave populations, and quarries to build their great stone towers. Explorers can easily overlook the presence of a major Aboleth city. The marks are subtle. Few inhabitants in the region, untended roth herds on isolated islands, and vast kelp beds along the lake floor. Aboleth have no natural enemies and are greatly feared by the Underdark races. These monsters view all intelligent races as either food or slaves. Only Ixzan, despite their chaotic nature, exhibit a natural affinity for the Aboleth and serve them willingly. Many Aboleth cities employ scum, a race bred for humanoid genetic stock, to serve as beasts of burden and powerful fighting machines. Scum do not resemble their humanoid ancestors, possessing a tail like an Aboleth's and 4 extremely strong limbs. Each limb ends in a webbed paw with 2 fingers and an opposable thumb, and each digit ends in a retractable claw. A scum's body is covered with a clear, slimy, hairless, grayish-green membrane. Scum lack external ears, and their eyes are like an aboleth's, an eerie shade of purplish red, but none more spherical. Beholders. Beholders are known as eye tyrants, and spheres of many eyes, are a race of intelligent, typically lawful evil monsters. They appear as large orbs dominated by a central eye and a large, toothy maw, with 10 smaller eyes on stalks sprouting from the top of the orb. Beholders on Torel grow as large as 6 feet in diameter. Most tend to have cool hues such as purple and blue on top, graduating down to earth tones on bottom. Their skin is pebbly, and they possess visible nostrils. Beholders levitate for support, allowing them to float about slowly. In addition to their deadly bite, beholders produce magical powers from their eyes. Their central eye emits an anti-magic ray, which cancels all magic in a 90-degree arc in front of a beholder. Small eyes have other powers. Beholder offspring often exhibit wildly varying mutations. Despite the efforts of beholder parents to eradicate mutants, subraces known as beholderkin often spring up. Oddly, each subrace considers itself a representation of one proper breed. Although true beholders, allowable variations exist, hive mothers found in rural communities known as hives. Hive mothers also spawn abominations, specialty breeds created to meet community needs, including defense or extra firepower during invasions. Elder orbs are ancient eye tyrants capable of casting wizard spells, who sometimes find their own hives. Beholder mages are younger orbs who have foregone their powers of their central eye to cast wizard spells. Beholders are believed to hail from the heavens, most likely the wandering star known in some cultures as Hakath. Their presence in Faerun is believed to date back to spelljammer crashes a few millennia ago. Successful hides survive by making their way into the Underdark before attempting to dominate the lands above and below. Eye tyrants are typically found in the upper Underdark, although tales flourish of mutants who flee deep into the earth and establish their own hives in the middle of the lower Underdark. Rogue individuals are also found in most surface regions. One beholder hive is known to have crashed in the Elmir Mountains and now dominates much of the Underdark east of the Kalimshan and south of the Vilhon Reach. A second breed has long been active in eastern Anaruk and the deep realms of the Moonsea region. A third, lesser-known hive has expanded throughout the tunnels of the Great Peak Mountains in the lands once claimed by the Dwarves of Anamirandar. Individual beholders are found throughout the realms below, often allied with or served by individuals of other races. A single hive mother rules each beholder city, advised by a ruling council of other hive mothers who perform lesser administrative tasks. Magic, and to a lesser extent psionics, play a great role in such societies. In fact, spellcasting, spell-like abilities, and psionic powers are a beholder's main interaction with its environment, supplemented by charmed minions. Beholders that use wizard spells usually research unique spells, and all eye tyrants create unique magical items. Most spells researched by beholder mages and elder orbs duplicate common spells, but require only verbal components. Most of a beholder's unique spells enhance or modify its natural abilities. Common beholder constructs such as mouthpicks and beholder armor facilitate interaction with the physical world. Mouthpicks are long poles held in the mouth that sport tools or weapons on one end. These are used when telekinesis is inconvenient. Beholder armor is basically enchanted plate mail that beholders settle on top of. This armor allows them faster movement and the ability to use hands. Eye tyrants of the Underdark typically venerate one or both of the 2 racial deities, the Great Mother, whose portfolios encompass magic, fertility, and tyranny, and Gesnid, whose areas of control include gases and fogs, obscurement, and deception. Beholders have no priest caste, but the Great Mother sometimes elevates hive mothers to priestess status when pressed by enemies. Gesnid does not grant powers or spells to his followers. Beholders who venerate other gods such as Bane or his successor try to remain in shallow caverns near the surface. Eye tyrant cities are difficult to recognize from afar, as they are rarely composed of freestanding edifices in large caverns. Rather, beholder hives adapt natural cavern complexes or rifts in the earth with their disintegration powers. Such cities have limited access, typically only one opening large enough to admit a beholder. But cities are designed so their inhabitants can quickly carve an escape route should they need to retreat. Beholder cities boasting humanoid minions are usually spread out horizontally so the humanoids can function. However, cities populated only by eye tyrants are constructed vertically to hinder interlopers incapable of aerial movement in tight confines. Individual dwellings resemble warped nests, consisting of vertical tubes artfully blasted into the stone, interconnecting by cross shafts at varying levels. Vast amphitheaters provide forums for eye tyrants to gather, recite ritualized stories of victory, and compete in magical or athletic contests. The architecture of such enclaves is dominated by the artistry of stone carvings and sculptures, forming alien landscapes scattered with trophies. Many of these trophies are petrified representatives of other races that serve both as artistic displays and ready food stores. Explorers rarely come across beholder cities on their own. When they do, it is usually through inadvertent tunneling. More often, explorers are captured in the wilds of the Underdark, charmed and brought back to the city to serve as minions or carefully petrified artwork. Eye tyrants consider all other races as well as other breeds of beholder and beholderkin to be lesser creatures who exist only to be enslaved or consumed. They commonly refer to all such beings as meat. Beholders respect more powerful creatures, but only so far as to carefully plan attempts to destroy them. Beholder hives and cities never ally with cities populated by other beholder breeds or other races, although they may refrain from attacking if expedient. However, individual beholders, particularly those who have been exiled for their demented beliefs, sometimes deign to ally themselves with individuals of other races. Cloakers, also known as lurkers in shadows and chasm rays, resemble common black cloaks with rows of black eye spots running down their backs like buttons. Two ivory-colored claws on the upper edge of the cloaker's form are easily mistaken for bone clasps. The white underside of a cloak bears a horrific horned face composed of two glowing red eyes and a ravenous maw. A whip-like tail completes its monstrous form. Cloakers fly with blinding speed, engulfing prey within their folds. While devouring victims, cloakers defend themselves with their tails. In addition, they emit subsonic moans with varying effects that induce unease, fear, nausea, weakness, or paralyzation. Cloakers also manipulate shadows to obscure opponents' visions or produce precise images. Cloakers' thought process are utterly alien to most other life forms. As such, only mages who devote long hours to training their minds in the arcane discipline can understand them. A rare elite form of cloaker, known as a cloaker lord, appears as a large black cloak, such as an ogre or a giant might wear. Cloaker lords' powers and abilities correspond to those of normal cloakers, but with significant enhancements. Otherwise, they are physically identical to their lesser kin. Cloakers have lived in the Underdark since the earliest recorded dwarf explorations. Their origins are lost in the midst of history. Many scholars have noted the close physical resemblance of cloakers to other flying greys. Others suggest a kinship between cloakers and bats, pointing to sinisters in particular. A closer study reveals that while some ancestral kinship may exist between cloakers and other races, chasm rays are decidedly alien. A few sages go so far as to speculate that cloakers are descendants of an ancient race of proto-rays or proto-bats. Proto-rays who made their way into the demi-plane of shadow for a time before returning to the Underdark. All agree that cloakers have long resided in the realms below. Cloaker lords seem to be a relatively recent occurrence, arising within the past few centuries. An explanation of their manifestations still eludes scholars. Possibly cloaker lords have existed for as long as a common cloaker, but remained hidden for millennia because making their existence known, if true, that begs the question of why cloaker lords have been chosen to appear now within recorded history, and why no evidence of cloaker civilization dates back more than a few centuries. Cloakers are found individually in a small group throughout the lower and middle Underdark. They establish cities only when drawn together by one or more cloaker lords. Cloaker lords hold a natural domination effect overcommon cloakers, drawing normally solitary cloakers together into raiding bands, small communities, and even cities. If more than one cloaker lord is present, then the rulers draw together periodically to form a conclave of shadows, a body with no established leader that requires unanimity on any decision. When a conclave of shadows is convened, the assembled representatives form a ring, or in rare cases a sphere, by positioning themselves at different orientations and grasping each other with their claws. Such formations then undergo a temporary transformation, not yet understood, that results in a ring or sphere of living shadow stuff and an apparent merging of minds. When the cloaker lords disengage, they resume their original individual forms and disperse to carry out the conclave's decision. Although cloakers and cloaker lords historically do not exhibit spellcasting powers, their ties to the demiplane of shadow are strong and apparently growing. As such, other races have begun to report that a few cloaker lords seem to be developing the ability to cast wizard spells from the School of Shadow as spell-like effects. Others report that cloakers seem to travel through physical obstacles, lending credence to the suggestion that they can briefly shift into the demiplane of shadows and emerge elsewhere. Finally, the increasing frequency of gloomwings, shadelings, tenebros worms, and umbrals, shadow animals akin to animantals, near cloaker enclaves suggest that the cloakers summoned such creatures to the prime material plane, possibly even controlling them. Unlike nearly all other sentient races of the Underdark, cloakers do not appear to venerate any particular deity. Other races, with the notable exception of Darrow, refer to individual cloakers as Dinkarazan's mantle, a fanciful linking of the lost, mad demi-power of the Darrow to the alien thought process of the cloakers. Cloaker cities are built into the roofs of great subterranean caverns or on the sides of steep Underdark chasms. Favored locations include places with massive stalactites and towering chasm walls, inaccessible to those without flight or levitation. While cloakers do not dominate any one region of the deep earth, their isolated enclaves are rarely contested. Such strongholds are nearly impregnable to other races. If not for the tendencies of cloakers to hunt other nearby races, it would be simple enough to share such prized living spaces with those who prefer the more accessible cavern floors. More than one explorer has entered a large cave and mistaken the hordes of dark-flying creatures for bats, only to realize with horror that he or she has misjudged the scale of the subterranean cavern and that hundreds of cloakers are flittering overhead. Whether hewn into a rock face or a dangling stalactite, cloaker cities are recognizable for the countless apertures through which they enter and leave. Within a cloaker enclave, most passages are extremely high and narrow, rarely more than a few inches wide. Cloakers navigate such passageways by flattening their bodies and inching along with their claws. Chambers resemble hemispheres with smooth, rounded ceilings and wildly uneven floors with sharp spikes and crevices everywhere. The floors serve as both alien tapestries for the cloakers to contemplate as well as defensive mechanisms, preventing flightless races from establishing solid footing. While cloakers are capable of mining, agriculture, and trading, they would rather enslave other races to do these jobs for them. Some cloaker communities keep captive herds of deep growth penned in a cavern floor below their communities. Such examples of animal husbandry are exceptional, however. Sages suggest this fact indicates that cloaker society incorporates the hunt into societal ritual. Aside from an eerie, uninhabited region, the most obvious signal of a large community of cloakers is the warding song, a great barrier of sound created by a cloaker choir. The cacophony created by hundreds of cloakers emitting subsonic moans of increasingly intensity can echo through the Underdark for miles, creating panic and uncomprehending terror in communities far away with the slight shift of a breeze or an echo. Warding songs start and stop without any discernible pattern and thus are impossible to predict. While not truly evil, cloakers view all other races as prey. A few cloaker realms have allied themselves with other races, such as the Ixzan, though again, this is a rare exception. Other flying rays, including lurkers, mantry, and trappers, are treated as favored servitors. Some creatures, such as deep-spawn and floaters, are forced into servitude by the powers of the cloaker lord's moans. deep spawn serve as means to renew food stocks. Floaters who resemble long, puffed-up purple worms with tiny shimmering wings and rows on either side are enormous gas bags ranging from 20 to 100 yards long and up to 20 yards in diameter, who serve as beasts of burden. The Drow. The Drow, also known as Dark Elves, are chaotic, evil elves with skin like polished obsidian. Shorter and more slender than humans, they have pale eyes, stark white hair, and finely chiseled features. Drow move silently and have superior infravision, but are adversely affected by any sort of bright light. All Dark Elves train in magic and have high magic resistance. They can cast dancing lights, fairy fire, and darkness once per day. More powerful Drow can also cast levitate, know alignment, and detect magic. Priests and priestesses have additional granted powers as well. Driders are monstrous creatures with the head and torso of a drow and the legs and lower body of a giant spider. Lolth, the Spider Queen, creates Driders from drow who fail their goddess tests. Outcast from their communities, Driders are usually found alone or in the company of giant spiders on the edge of drow civilization. The drow once lived in the lands of light alongside their fairer kindred. More than 13,000 years ago, the Crown Wars raged among the fair folk. For 3,000 years, the elven nations of Avendar, Miritar, Chantel, Aether, Canterbury, and several other ones I can't pronounce, and others battled one another in a series of 5 great conflicts. At the end of the Fourth Crown War, circa 10,000 DR, the corrupt Dark Elven Illithids and others were transformed by Corellian's magic into drow as directed through the Protector's priests and high mages, and banished to the lightless depths of the Underdark. The first drow civilization rose in the Underdark in southern Faerun circa 9600 DR. The first great kingdom of the drow was Telantiwar, with its great capital in the great cavern of Bahadrin, the conquered heart of the first great kingdom of the Stout Folk, which was seized by the Drow in 9000 DR. The Drow fought amongst themselves, noble against noble, priest against priest, for rule of their new realm. This war ended amid great magical explosions that brought down the roof of Bahadrin. The ceiling collapsed entirely, burying many Drow in the shattered dwarven cities they had seized. The cavern, now open to the sky, became known as the Great Rift. Gold dwarf ancestors later resettled the chasm and surrounding caverns to form the Deep Realm. The following diaspora, known as the Scattering, the surviving Drow nobles and priests gathered what people, slaves, and equipment they could seize and fled into the Underdark. Since that time, countless cities and smaller settlements have risen and fallen in an increasing radius around the territory held by the Empire of Telantiwar. Drow are now found throughout the upper and middle Underdark of all of Faerun and beyond. Dark Elven cities are typically located in regions with strong magnetic forces, where the rock gives off radiation akin to magical energy known as Fairdris. The Drow are particularly strong in the Moonsea, north and west of the Ixzan range, from beneath Calcium all the way up to Icewind Dale, but their pervasive influence is felt throughout the Underdark, and few races challenge the Dark Elf's subterranean mastery. Due to the dogma of Lolth, the Spider Queen, most Drow cities are theocratic matriarchs, dominated by the clergy of one of the handful of dark powers venerated by Dark Elves. In cities that follow the way of Lolth, the Dark Elven populace is typically ruled by several dozen noble houses ranked in strict hierarchy. A small group of elite noble houses form the ruling council, led by the premier high priestess of the first house. Each noble house is turned and ruled by a courtier of high priestesses related and ranked in preeminence, with the highest ranking priestess of each noble house bearing the title of Matron Mother. A constant, intense, treacherous, and deadly competition seethes among the various noble houses, mirrored by the constant struggle among individual priestesses to increase relative station. These battles follow rules of behavior best characterized as, if it cannot be proven, then it did not happen. The war among Drow nobility allows other groups to also achieve some power and influence. Drow wizards, who are usually male, often ally with a noble house. Merchant trading companies receive noble backing. Mercenaries sell their blades, all shifting the balance of power. In a Drow city, where other powers check Lolth's priestesses, they may even assume rule of the city. But the constant struggle for a station does not stop. In cities where Lolth's worship is unknown or marginal, different power structures emerge. But these too are festering pools of intrigue and treachery. The only absolute appears to be that if more than one divine power is openly venerated, civil war and societal collapse are inevitable. The premier goddess of the Drow is Lolth the Spider Queen, goddess of spiders, evil, darkness, chaos, and assassins. Other powerful deities, including Gwandadar the Elder Eye, the god of ooze, slimes, jellies, outcasts, ropers, rebels, and all things subterranean. The Veharan, the Mask Lord, the god of thievery, drow males, territory, and evil activity on the surface world. Lesser powers include Karansali, the Reverencer, goddess of the undead and vengeance, and Selvtarm, the champion of Lolth, god of drow warriors. Finally, although she is rarely venerated in the Underdark, Elistri, the Dark Maiden, is the good-aligned goddess of song, beauty, swordwork, hunting, and moonlight, who seeks to redeem the Drow and lead them back to the lands of light. Drow wizards and priests are known throughout the Underdark and surface world for mass-producing unusual weapons and clothing with quasi-magical properties. Such properties are particularly the result of exposure to the fair dress, a powerful and strange radiation found only in the Underdark. Drow society live and die by the proximity of fair dress to their cities. Though the enchantments fade in the sunlight, they are terrors in the Underdark. Aside from the items, Drow spellcasters can also develop countless new spells. Many are even adopted by other wizard schools and clergies of other faiths. Drow cities are similar to surface cities in that they are laid out horizontally and consist of buildings clustered into districts, intertwined with wide avenues, narrow alleys, and plazas. They differ in the absence of wood, although petrified mushroom stalks often serve the same purpose. The use of modified cave structures instead of freestanding buildings, and the general lack of ramps and stairs within many upper-class habitations. Elite Drow usually have quasi-magical clothing that allows them to levitate. Drow architecture betrays ancient elven origins in its artistry. Dark elves favor soaring, sculpted structures whose strength stems as much from magic as the natural strength of the stone. Drow cities are notable for their intricate spiral tunnels, bodily flying stone bridges, balconies, and buttresses. Dark elven engineers hollow out and shape stalactites, stalagmites, and cave columns for habitation. Rock is always cut and shaped, never left unworked. Drow city environs are a maze of well-patrolled tunnels that serve both as a training ground for Drow warriors and a defensive fortification as they fall back through a warren of deceptions and traps. The most obvious sign of the Drow activity outside the city proper include guarded caverns where quasi-magical items are fabricated, heavily warded channels throughout which water is diverted to the city, worked by dwarven and dark gnome slaves and overseen by dark elf taskmasters. Often a small region of caverns and tunnels is given over to Drider outcasts and used as a means of dispensing of prisoners unsuitable for sacrifice. While fungi fields and herds of Roth are typically kept within each city's central cavern, some Drow caverns are too small and are forced to locate their food supplies outside the city. Further afield, Drow patrols are infrequent but regular, as dark elves are the great merchants of the Underdark. The various merchant consortiums are a regular presence along established trade routes of the realm below. Giant subterranean lizards act as beasts of burden, with Drow warriors mounted on riding lizards as outriders. Dark elves extend their own caste and gender-based prejudices to other races as well, while the Dark elves willingly trade with nearly any race, even good-aligned races such as dwarves and dark gnomes. If a willingness to trade is reciprocated, the Dark elves consider themselves inherently superior and will destroy their trading partners without compunction. Dark elves reserve their greatest hatred for their surface kin and even conduct surface raids expressly for the purpose of killing and enslaving elves. Because many other races loathe the Drow, the Dark elves are never without potential enemies. Dwarves, also known as stout folk, are found both above and below the surface. Dwarves are relatively short compared to humans, but very stocky and muscular. They have ruddy cheeks, bright eyes, and deep tan or light brown skin. Their hair is usually black, gray, or brown, and worn long, and all dwarves, both male and female, prize their long and carefully groomed beards and mustaches. Dwarves are a highly non-magical race, resistant to toxic substances and magical domers. The stout folk are gifted with improvision and natural instincts regarding construction. Most dwarves are skilled warriors, versed in combat against common foes, including goblins, goblinoids, orcs, ogres, trolls, giants, giantkin. The dwarf race is fragmented into half a dozen races and sub-races. Most dwarven legends trace their earliest settlements back tens of thousands of years to the great mountain range Yamahal. Scholars believe that in an exodus from the Yamahal, the stout folk split into 2 or 3 major branches and spread across Faerun. Karatur, Zakhara, those who came to Faerun are believed to have settled beneath modern Sephar before spreading westward, eventually fragmenting into 4 subraces. The first great Faerunian dwarven kingdom centered in the cavern of Bahardin. Beneath the Shar, the dwarves' first great schism came with the founding of Shanatar beneath much of southwestern Faerun. Emigrants from Shanatar merged with the Scaterdwarf enclaves in the region to form a distinct subrace known today as the Shield Dwarfs. Shield Dwarfs eventually founded most of the great dwarven nations of north, from Agrugan to Granagar. From the earlier Shield Dwarfs, Durmathoin then created the Urdunren. After the Crown Wars and the descent of the Dark Elves, Beirindin and the surrounding territories fell to the Drow, and the dwarves of southern Faerun were driven into exile and scattered. Dwarves who fled as far as the Chult abandoned their underground homes, interbred with the small enclaves of dwarfs already dwelling there, and became the ancestors of the wild dwarfs who dwell on the Chult Peninsula today. After the first Drow kingdom of Talantawar tore itself apart in civil war, the great cavern of Bahardin collapsed to form the Great Rift. Those dwarfs who resettled the caverns surrounding the Great Rift were ancestors of the Gold Dwarfs, or Hill Dwarfs. The last great schism occurred when Illithids enslaved an entire clan of Shield Dwarfs. Clan Dugar sometime before the founding of Deep Shanatar. The Dugar were long absent from Shanatar before their rediscovery, and spread through much of the Underdark during the intervening period. Some speculate that the legendary Duro may have been the result of the Illithid breeding experiments between Duergar and humans. Other minor branches of dwarves, including the desert dwarves of Mazdaka, the Arctic dwarfs of the Great Glacier, and the albino dwarves of Chult, are isolated branches of shield dwarfs. Legends of an aquatic race of dwarfs in the Sea of Fallen Stars are conclusively discredited by every scholar who looks into the question. The stout folk today are enmeshed in a slow decline. At one time, shield dwarfs stretched from their ancestral home beneath Kalimshan to the spine of the world and up around the Moonsea. Gold dwarfs had established kingdoms stretching from the Shar all the way across southern Faerun, up and around the eastern end of the Sea of Fallen Stars. The Grey Dwarfs held great caverns throughout the Middle Underdark. Most of the great dwarven realms have now fallen, their halls occupied by foul monsters. No one knows the reasons behind the decline. Explanations revolve around the dwarfs' low birth rate and their near-genocidal conflicts with orcs and goblins. The low birth rates may have been caused by an evolutionary response to their long lifespans, millennia of exposure to the magical radiations of the Underdark, working overmuch with heavy ores and excessive clan inbreeding. The stout folk are found throughout the upper Underdark, typically in and among the great mountain ranges of the surface world. With small scattered enclaves in the middle Underdark, in recent millennia, dwarves have ceded much of their ancient territory. They now gather in their last great enclave, centered around the richest veins of ore in the Underdark, heavily fortified against outsiders. Dwarves of every stripe retain a close affiliation with their family, clan, and realm. All clans have chiefs who go by varying titles, and except among the Darrow and Dugar, hold their positions by election. Groups of clans together make up a realm, traditionally ruled by hereditary kings. Lately, few such kingdoms remain, and a monarch's personal popularity and fitness to rule is increasingly viewed as important. Every clan has its elder dwarfs of influence, wealth, personal might, and distinguished age. Clan elders shape the lives of clan members, and their votes determine policy, law, and justice. Clan elders once could approve or deny marriages, renouncing the membership of any who married against their will or outside the clan. However, the dwindling birth rates of the Stalfolk have ended such influence. Dwarves are famous throughout the realms above and below for their technological mastery, their mining prowess, and the beauty and durability of their craftsmanship. Despite their inherent non-magical nature, dwarves have mastered the art of forging enchanted weapons and armor. Likewise, dwarven priests are skilled spellcasters as long as they retain their holy symbols. Less understood is the ability of dwarves to create powerful rune magic. Folk believe that the dwindling ranks of dwarven runecasters once worked great feats of enduring magic throughout the Underdark. These effects continue to be felt today, and their impact rivaled that of elven high mages. Dwarves are far more pious than many surface races suspect, devoutly venerating their pantheon. The Mordensiman, the dwarven gods, are said to have sprung from stone and earth, beginning with Moradin. Berinar is universally held to be Moradin's wife, and many dwarven theologians believe all the other dwarven powers are their descendants. Although the exact ordering of ancestry varies from myth to myth, after Moradin and Berinar, the oldest dwarven powers are thought to be Dumathoin, Abathor, Ludogor, Clangadin, Sharindlar, and the twins Dinkarzan and Darinka. The next group of dwarven gods commonly worshipped in the realms include Thardhar, Gorm Guthin, Mothhammer Durn, Dugmarin Brightmantle, and recent additions to the pantheon said to be the grandchildren of Moradin and Berinar have included Hela, Brightaxe, and Deep Dora. Masters of engineering, dwarves completely reshape their subterranean environments. The stout folk have a great feel for stone, and their stonework strengthens and enhances the earth's natural structures. As a result, dwarven architecture radiates enduring strength and is apt to outlive its creators by many generations. The stout folk favor freestanding columns and great arches, smooth, clean lines that display the beauty of the stone. Dwarven communities take root in the great natural caverns of the Underdark near rich veins of ore, living in and among the rock itself. Passages into and out of dwarven enclaves are heavily trapped and easily navigable only by dwarves. Dwarven homes are often built into terraced cavern walls, part freestanding and part dug into the rock. The stout folk are ever vigilant against threats from the tunnels below. Heavily armed and armored patrols of fierce dwarven warriors regularly tromp through the surrounding environs of a dwarven community. Dwarves settle relatively close to areas of volcanic activity, so their smithies lie near natural forges and rich veins of ore. This also leaves a maze of tunnels in the vicinity of caverns in which they dwell. However, dwarves have a much better understanding of the environment in which they dwell than do miners of other races, and as a result leave far less evidence of their mining activities than one might suspect. Darrow. The Darrow are a degenerate, chaotic, evil race, least like the other dwarven races and sub-races. They are short and stocky with skin the color of an iced-over lake. Their sickly, pale yellow hair hangs straight over staring, pupilless eyes. Darrow facial features have both human and dwarven characteristics, and their rough skin is spotted with short, coarse tufts of hair. Darrow never willingly expose themselves to direct sunlight. It nauseates them and can kill them within a matter of days. The primary deities of the Darrow are the twins Dinkarzan and Darinka. Darrow dwell primarily in the middle and lower reaches of the Underdark, although small warbands sometimes climb to the upper reaches and even raid surface communities. Although most of the stout folk are inherently non-magical, the Darrow are ruled by savants, powerful spellcasters with sage-like knowledge in many areas. Every 20 years or so, the Darrow mount an all-out war against all other creatures of the Underdark. Each uniting war winnows out the weakest members of the race, creates a focal point for racial identity, and induces general terror. Duergar. The lawful evil Duergar, also known as the Grey Dwarves, appear to be emaciated, nasty-looking dwarfs with complexions and hair ranging from medium to dark gray. In addition to the normal abilities of the stout folk, the Duergar are skilled psionicists and possess the magical abilities of enlargement. Duergar are adversely affected by sunlight. The primary deities of the Duergar are Landagor, the Exile, and Deep Dura. Duergar dwell primarily in the upper and middle reaches of the Underdark, although some believe scattered clans have ventured into the Underdark's deepest tunnels. The Duergar are the bitter exiles of the Dwarven race, sharing much of the Shield and Gold Dwarf cultures. Overlaid with harshness and cruelty, they hate most other races, but grudgingly trade with them. While the Grey Dwarves and Dark Elves often fight, the two races are regular, if reluctant, trading partners. Likewise, Duergar skilled in psionics enable the Grey Dwarfs to hold their own, and thus trade with both Aboleth and Illithids. Golden Dwarfs. Lawful good Golden Dwarfs have dusky skin tones, sometimes colored deep red instead of cinnamon brown, and dark, usually black hair. They tend to be shorter and more heavy-set than Shield Dwarfs. Gold Dwarfs are found primarily in the southern and eastern reaches of the upper Underdark. Most Gold Dwarfs gravitate to the tunnels and caverns surrounding the Great Rift, but small enclaves are still found as far afield the mountains of Halrua or deep beneath the Thayan plateaus. Gold Dwarfs are powerful, proud, and xenophobic, shunning even other dwarfs, and traveling little in the surface world. Their numbers have not declined as quickly as those of their northern kin, but Gold Dwarfs are still locked in the same self-destructive cycle of warfare against the other Underdark races that has led to the collapse of many northern kingdoms. Shield Dwarfs. Lawful good Shield Dwarfs are the prototypical dwarfs, found primarily in the western and northern reaches of the upper Underdark. They have long since immigrated from the ancient caverns of Shanatar in the southwest. The number of lost Shield Dwarf holds far outstrips the number extant today. Shield Dwarfs have solid alliances with other good-aligned races, particularly in the Svirfneblin. Relationships with the Duergar are uniformly hostile and often break out into open conflict. Darrow relations are even worse. Shield Dwarfs deeply hate Aboleth, Drow, Illithids, Kuo-toa, and other slaving races. They trade with them only reluctantly. Undunnerin. The Undunnerin, a forgotten neutral offshoot of the Shield Dwarfs whose name means ore cutter in their dialect, are said to be specially blessed by Dumathion, the Keeper. Undunnerin look like Shield Dwarfs, except that their skin tends to be light gray, while their long beards range from light to dark gray, and their eyes are silver. In addition to the normal abilities of all stout folk, ore cutters can walk through stone and earth like air, while bringing other items with them. They shape stone or metal with a thought, and strike with their powerful rock-hard fists for great damage. Instead of animal and vegetable products, Undunnerin consume gems from veins replenished by Dumathion himself. Undunnerin are found primarily in the western and northern reaches of the middle and lower Underdark, deep beneath the kingdoms of the Shield Dwarven cousins. Illithids. The Illithids, also known as Mind Flayers, are a race of lawful evil amphibious hermaphrodites with powerful psionic abilities. They are greatly feared throughout the Underdark. Adult Mind Flayers stand about 6 feet tall, are vaguely humanoid, and have hideous mauve skin that glistens with slime. Their heads have pupilless white eyes and 4 tentacles encircling a round, many-toothed orifice resembling that of a lamprey. Each hand has 3 reddish fingers and a thumb. Mind Flayers employ a wide range of psionic powers, including their widely feared Mind Blasts. In addition, their tentacles are adapted for latching onto the victim's skull and then burrowing into the brain. Illithids beget clutches of eggs that hatch into small, writhing, relatively helpless tadpoles. Tadpoles who survive a decade of life in the briny pools of the elder brains undergo ceremorphosis, a secretive process whereby they merge with a humanoid by consuming its brains. They then initiate a series of morphological transformations that result in the commonly seen adult form. Illithids are rarely seen elite mind flayers, found in 10% of the Illithid community. They quickly rise up to leadership. Elder brains are sentient, disembodied minds that reside at the bottom of the briny pools in which Illithid tadpoles are nurtured. An elder brain's cognizance stems from the brain tissue of recently deceased mind flayers. The tissue alloys into a united consciousness maintained by an intricate psionic science. The Alhun or Illithiliches are rogue Illithids who practice sorcery. This process involves a transformation into undeath, after which the Illithiliches gather into cabals for mutual defense. Ceramorphs, also known as Flayerkin, are one of the few successful crosses between Illithid tadpoles and another race. Known Ceramorph successes include Mazgrekin, Zankandi, Europhins, and crosses between Illithid tadpoles and Svirfneblin, lizardmen, and ropers respectively. Neothelids are leviathan slugs that result from Illithid tadpoles who remain apart from a humanoid. This incredibly rare event occurs only when an elderbrain dies. Its Illithid community collapses, and a single tadpole survives the cannibalism of its abandoned kindred. Vampire Illithids are considered naught by a legend, but some claim that these undead horrors stalk the Underdark with the cunning of a rabid animal. Like most races, long residents in the Underdark, the origins of the Illithids are lost in the mist of history. Nevertheless, the tadpole form of their young suggests that they may have evolved in briny subterranean pools before developing the parasitic adult forms they now assume through Ceramorphous. Given the amphibious hermaphroditic origins of mind flayers, psionic abilities, and quadrenticle maws, some sages speculate that the Illithid may be distantly related to the Aboleth. The former has evolved as a parasite capable of ceramorphizing with sentient humanoids, and the latter evolved to live without a host. In any event, the utter hatred mind flayers show for the sun indicates a long tenure with the tunnels of the night below, as does their widespread distribution throughout the upper, middle, and lower reaches of the Underdark. Despite their amphibious origins, adult mind flayers cannot breathe when submerged and do not dwell in wholly aquatic settings. As benefits their parasitic origins, Illithids are commonly found in damp caverns near larger enclaves of other sentient races on which they can prey. They do not dominate large reaches of territory. Some legends speak of a great world or plain-spanning Illithid empire that fell long ago, but evidence of any such empire incorporating the Underdark is spotty at best. Nonetheless, the hatred that the Githyanki and the Githzari evice for their former masters across multiple worlds indicates at least a kernel of truth in such tales. The center of every Illithid community, except those formed by Illithiliches, is the Elder Brain. While a few particularly despotic Elder Brains oversee every decision that potentially affects the community, the majority are more passive, serving as consultants, advisors, and living repositories of the community's technology, history, and psionic expertise. Illithids form structured, ordered societies in which every mind flayer has its place and purpose. Individual groups themselves into ideological factions known as creeds. Major creeds include 1. Creatives who research and create psychic disciplines, items, and technology. Awaiters, those who favor patient, cohesive planning. Possessors, who seek wealth and an avenue to power. Tamers, who favor the exercise of military might. Thoroughbiters, who believe insight comes from analyzing failure. Nourishers, who treasure their thralls above all else. Abysmal, who gain power by inducing fear in thrall races. Influencers, who unearth secrets and sway opinions indirectly. Darkeners, who labor to extinguish the sun. Gatherers, who seek to reunite the disparate Illithid communities. Arisers, who seek to dominate the surface world. Venerators, who function as priests. Members of each creed seek to advance their particular philosophy, which often involves complex plots, psionically empowered devices, and new psionic devotions and sciences. Representatives from each creed make up an Elder Concord, which assumes important rulership duties. In its role as shepherd of the community, an Elder Brain is privy to every decision made by the Elder Concord, and has the power to propose course of actions, cast tiebreaker votes, and veto actions. Within its sphere of influence, each Elder Concord elects Illithid officials, including Aldelators, who are responsible for running day-to-day affairs, Quasitors, who are administrative finances and trade, Invigilators, who direct security efforts, When the goals of more than one Illithid community overlap, the involved ruling Concord form a temporary body referred to as a Grand Elder Concord. The primary god of Illithids is Ixzan, whose portfolio includes mental domination and magic. Some mind flayers venerated Manzo-Korean before he was slain by Orcus. Unlike the theocracy of many other Underdark races, members of the Ixzan's clergy simply form one creed among the many factions. Illithid cities constitute the largest communities of mind flayers, with as many as 2,000 inhabitants. Larger enclaves are rumored to exist in the deepest reaches of the realms below. Thralls make up at least 2.5 times the number of Illithid city residents, and cities are often initially mistaken for primitive communities of the predominant Thrall race. The city's outer facade occupies large natural caverns. The true Illithid city lies beneath the cavern floor or such slave communities. These deeper areas have an outer and inner ring. The outer ring connects to the Thrall caverns and is composed of a wide quarter encircling axial plazas and Illithid private dwellings. Along the outer ring are chambers that serve as armories, Thrall barracks, arenas, theaters, treasure vaults, laboratories, temples, water supplies, and bazaars, each administered by Illithids of the appropriate creed. Each axial plaza is wide, highly spherical chamber constituting the prime area of social congregation for the Illithid population. Private dwellings are carved into the walls and ceiling of the chamber. The floors of each plaza holds a series of wide, shallow basins for relaxation with attendant eating stocks for easy feeding. The city's inner ring sits beneath the axial plaza, completely encased in stone, accessible only through magic or psychoportive psionics. The inner ring houses birthing pods, reserved for individual tadpoles during ceremorphos. At the center of the inner ring is the pool of the city's elder brain, the physical and spiritual heart of the city. The Elder Concord meets and plans around the edge of the Elder Brain's pool. Illithid architecture is given to smooth, curvy surfaces carved to resemble brain tissue and bas relief. The carving is overlaid with a continuous line of Quaggoths, a writing system based on texture and touches that consists of 4 striated lines, each alternately solid or broken, which Illithids read by running their tentacles along it. Long before stumbling on an Illithid community, explorers will likely encounter regular patrols led by vigilators. Patrols include one or more Illithids, heavily armed thralls, and various servitor creatures, as discussed below. Because Illithids often mount regular expeditions into the wilds of the Underdark for trade, acquiring knowledge or hunting new thralls, they are often encountered far from their communities. They are heavily prepared when so encountered. While they may sometimes treat non-Illithids as peers if doing so improves trade or delicate negotiations, Illithids regard other races as thralls, beasts good only for menial tasks and nourishment. Nevertheless, Illithid communities often establish trade relations with their prey, seeking information, magic, psionic devices, sentient brains for psychic nourishment. Every Illithid has, at minimum, 2 personal thralls. The community also possesses a thrall militia and a general thrall pool, each of which normally contains a number of slaves equal to 10% of the privately owned thrall population. The racial makeup of an Illithid's community's thrall population varies, but generally speaking, Illithids try to keep their thrall racial mix limited to 1 or 2 races, so as not to imperil slaving breeding programs. Common thralls include Grimlocks, Drow, surface-dwelling humanoids, Kuo-toa, and Darrow. In addition, servants such as brain golems, cranium rats, gallbrawn, intellect devourers, Mozgrekin, Neurala golems, ortlings, Zakandi, Europhans, and vampire squids are known. The Ixzan, also known as demon rays and spawn of Ilkasendrin, are closely related to their saltwater kin, the Ixzan Chittle, who dwell in the warm shallows of the surface seas. Ixzan are intelligent, typically chaotic evil creatures who resemble manta rays with barbed tails. Their colors vary. Most have gray underbellies and mottled brown to gray upper surfaces. Ixzan are semi-amphibious and can survive out of water for 1 full turn before needing to return underwater to breathe. Ixzan attack with a powerful bite. Although some mutants have an additional attack with their barbed tails, several exceptional Ixzan exist, including Priest Ixzan, Wizard Ixzan, Mutant Ixzan, and Vampiric Ixzan. Since Ixzan communities are more isolated than those of their seawater cousins, they are more varied in nature with a higher proportion of exceptionally or unusual types. Priest Ixzan, who form some 10% of the Ixzan community, can attain up to 8th level and have access to a range of spells. Wizard Ixzan, who form some 5% of the total Ixzan population, can attain up to 12th level. Only exceptionally rare individuals are priest wizards. Mutant Ixzan are neither priests nor wizards and form only 2% of most Ixzan population. Common mutations include a barbed and possibly poisoned tail, a thick ridge of jawbone that can inflict a crushing bite and hold the victim, or the secretion of a thick corrosive slime when out of the water. Finally, vampiric Ixzan are also among the rare, making up some 3% of the Ixzan population, with 1/4 of them also exhibiting priest abilities and 1/4 exhibiting wizard abilities. Greater vampiric Ixzan, akin to greater vampiric Ixzan Chittle rulers, exist, but their powers are a mystery. The origins of the Ixzan are cloaked in the midst of time, although their obvious kinship with the Ixzan Chittle bespeaks a historic tie to the surface waters. Despite the existence of freshwater lakes on the surface and saltwater seas in the Underdark, few if any Ixzan are found in the lands of the light, and few if any Ixzan Chittle are found in the realms below. The fate of the mixing Ixzan Chittle subraces is unknown. There is no proof that they ever existed. While most surface scholars speculate the Ixzan are, much like the Drow or Duergar, an offshoot of the main Ixzan Chittle race that made its way down into the Underdark ages ago, other evidence points to the Ixzan Chittle immigrating from the night below upward. In particular, some sages consider Cloakers, Ixzan Chittle, Ixzan, Lurkers, Mantari, Miners, Forest Trappers, and possibly even Sinisters, normally thought to be a type of bat, to stem from the same racial stock. All these races except the Ixzan Chittle and Miners inhabit the Underdark, lending strength to the hypothesis a race of proto-rays swam or flew up from the depths. A minority of scholars conclude an opposite hypothesis. The Ixzan Chittle made their way into the Underdark, adapted to the freshwater, and then their propensity for mutation in the presence of Underdark radiation created Cloakers, Lurkers, Mantari, and the like. Much of the Ixzan's early history was passed down via oral tradition and has since been co-opted by the priest caste and transformed into religious teachings, undermining its usefulness as a matter of historical record. Nonetheless, Ixzan lore speaks of two seminal events, the Great Flood and the revelation of the Demon Ray. The dispersal of the Ixzan race is said to be the result of the Great Flood in the early days that left scattered Ixzan throughout the realms below after it receded. Geological evidence of a near total inundation of the Underdark at some point is mixed. Despite the efforts of sages to tie such an event to rapid glacial melting, the opening of the series of gates to the elemental plane of water, or the sudden draining of a great lake, the revelation of Ilkasendrin, the Demon Ray, which followed the Great Dysphoria, marked the commencement of over a century of religious strife among the Ixzan. Until that point, the Ixzan venerated a wide array of dark powers, including Dagon, Demigorgon, and Panzerol. In the aftermath of the religious wars, Ilkasendrin's clergy was firmly established in all but a handful of isolated communities, and the taint of vampirism had spread throughout the race. Today, the Ixzan are found in small, widely scattered communities throughout the realm below, situated in sizable Underdark lakes. Most Ixzan are found in the upper or middle Underdark, although few isolated communities exist in the lower reaches. The greatest concentration of Ixzan are found in lakes near the coastline of the surface world, leading further credence to the belief that the Ixzan and the Ixzan Chittle are closely related. Ixzan communities are divided along caste lines with no differentiation in roles among adult males and females. Little value is placed on the young prior to adulthood. The priest Ixzan deliberately raised them in a grueling process designed to make them strong and ruthless. Those who fail are neither mourned nor missed. Although newly born Ixzan are of neutral alignment, those who survive are almost universally chaotic evil. The only exceptions to this regimen are fledgling mages. Wizard Ixzan intuitively sense when a young Ixzan has magical ability and protect the fledgling spellcaster fiercely. They inculcate their own mortality into it through a regimen designed to instill a sense of absolute self-worth and contempt for lesser beings. Ixzan communities tend to be dominated by an oligarchy of the most powerful priests and wizards. Vampiric Ixzan with spell-casting abilities almost always rise to important positions such as ruling elites due to their power and their innate longevity, assuming that they are not killed off by vampiric rivals who want power for themselves. Decisions are often made by consensus, although unanimity is enforced by an implicit threat of the majority devouring the minority if challenged. As such, the leaders of the Ixzan community continuously struggle to win converts. Moreover, they sense when a majority opinion is beginning to emerge and quickly adopt its conclusion as their own. While wizard Ixzan in leadership positions speak and act only for themselves, priest Ixzan in a ruling oligarchy are forced to balance the compelling demands of the veiled hostilities in the ruling councils and the factionalism rampant within the Church of Ilkesindred. As a result, priest Ixzan do not dominate the communal governments despite their numbers and supposedly religious unanimity. The exact size and composition of the Ixzan ruling oligarchies varies, but membership is universally accorded through a trial by combat, usually to the death. As such, while leadership theoretically falls to any member of the community, in practice is reserved for powerful priests and wizard Ixzan, along with a handful of vampiric Ixzan with wizard or priest abilities. Ixzan spellcasters are quite accomplished, given the restrictions their forms place on verbal or somatic components. Ixzan priests are granted variant spells that do not require normal verbal or somatic components. Wizards employ innate spell-like abilities usable once per day, but require neither spellbooks nor spell memorization. Nice. These spellcasters may employ spells from any school, but most commonly they use divination as well as spells to enslave or attack others, to defend their own persons, or to enhance their personal ability. Nonetheless, Ixzan mastery of the arts has led to the creation of many legendary artifacts of great magical power and the mastery of many unique spells. As noted above, the worship of Ilkesindred is nearly universal among the Ixzan. Although scattered cults of other powers survive in isolated enclaves, although the Ixzan are generally ruled by oligarchies of the most powerful priests, wizards, and in some cases vampiric Ixzan, their societies are theocracies governed by the precepts of Ilkesindred as a whole, emphasizing cruelty, capriciousness, and bloodlust. Vampiric and mutant Ixzan are revered as the favored of the demon race. Common Ixzan are dominated by the priest caste, and the wizard Ixzan generally go their own way. The Ixzan fashion great step pyramids on the bottoms of Underdark lakes with charmed slave labor. These serve as temples and communal quarters with interior chambers connected by water-filled shafts and tunnels. Slaves are kept alive through water-breathing magic and housed in small huts on islands of rock or rocky shores with no escape except via water. Ixzan societies are less tied to the maintenance of large slave populations than other Underdark races. They rarely make much effort to ensure a stable food supply for slaves, leading to repeated outbreaks of famine. Aside from natural prisons inhabited by small groups of air-breathing slaves and the tendency of the Ixzan to overhunt, the spawn of Ilkesindred leave little evidence of their presence to air-breathers. Although the Ixzan have many enemies, there are no particular race for which they have special animosity. In one Underdark domain, the Ixzan may get on well with the Drow, where hundreds of miles away they might be deadly enemies. Ixzan have a natural affinity for Aboleth and Kuo-toa. Aboleth are the dominant party in the Aboleth-Ixzan alliance, while Ixzan dominate Kuo-toa in turn, regarding them as essentially stupid, strong, excellent guards, but stupid nonetheless. Ixzan are often found living with Kuo-toa. Their respective powers, Bilduploop and Ilkesindred, are known to be on relatively good terms. In such communities, Ixzan and Kuo-toa dwell in separate areas, where the Ixzan guarding the entrance to the central pyramid, if they have one, zealously. Ixzan wizards use their spell powers to assist Kuo-toa in battle. Ixzan wizards use their spell powers to assist Kuo-toa in battle, while allowing the Kuo-toa to do hand-to-hand fighting and take most of the risks. The Kuo-toa, also known divisively as Gogglers, are an ancient race of intelligent, typically neutral evil or chaotic evil fishmen. They look like paunchy humans covered in scales, topped with a fish head. They have huge fish eyes, undersized arms and legs, and long, partially webbed hands and feet, and 3 fingers and an opposing digit. Kuo-toa are typically pale gray in coloration. Males have undertones of tan or yellow. Gogglers reek of dead fish. Their skin tone darkens when they are angry and pales when they are badly frightened. Adult Kuo-toa are amphibious. Although Kuo-toa can attack with a sharp bite, most are well armed. Elite warriors and priests often use harpoons and pincer staves, respectively. Kuo-toan skin secretions make them physically slippery. They are immune to poisons and paralysis, partially immune to electrical attacks, and unaffected by most spells targeting humanoids. Kuo-toa hate bright light and are weakened by strong illumination. They have incredibly fine senses and are difficult to surprise. Elite Gogglers may become priests, priest thieves, monitors, a variant monk, fighters, and whips, fighter thieves. Those possessing thief skills are also trained as assassins. The Gogglers vanished from the surface of Aboleth well before the dawn of recorded human history. However, scattered lore suggests that the Kuo-toa are distant kin of the nomadic Locath. Ancient legends suggest that the Kuo-toa evolved amphibious qualities and colonized shores and islands of the upper world before being driven back into the sea by humans and demi-humans. Other tales suggest that their deep hatred for surface dwellers is misplaced and stems from the earliest appearances of modified land dwellers, sea elves, mermen, etc., who colonized their underwater domain. In any event, an extended war nearly exterminated the species, and the survivors fled to deep-sea caverns and secret subterranean waters. Forgotten by their ancient enemies, they adapted to their new environment. In the Kuo-toa version of history, surface dwellers drove them from their habitat. Some scholars link this event to the Second Saros War between the inner seas nearly 10 millennia ago. Kuo-toan survivors fled into the deepest trenches and made their way into the Underdark. Kuo-toa of the Sea of Fallen Stars in particular are said to have retreated into the depths surrounding the Altumble Peninsula and into the Underdark. During the migration, the Gogglers encountered something that transformed their culture and introduced a streak of insanity. Some legends say the Kuo-toa were enslaved by the Morgoth. Others whisper that the Gogglers awoke some buried elder gods. Today, Kuo-toa are found primarily in the middle Underdark, although scattered enclaves mostly dominated by another allied race are found throughout the upper and lower reaches. In ages past, Kuo-toa dominated great cavern complexes along the shores of most great subterranean lakes. Now they are in decline, driven into marginal subterranean oases by more aggressive races who fight for territory. As a result, only a few great cities survive. Temples of the Sea Mother remain in relatively wet caverns near great bodies of water, but most Kuo-toa dwell far from their ancestral territories in small tribal groupings, forced to make arduous pilgrimages to the race's sacred shrines. Shrines are open to all Kuo-toa, as well as other races who may come to trade and serve as forums for intergroup trade, councils, and worship of the Sea Mother. Away from the shrines, Kuo-toan tribes are uncooperative, dwelling in small primitive clusters around a natural spring or an underdark river with a continuous water supply. Kuo-toan society is rigidly segregated in castes. Every individual knows his or her place, fawning over betters and ordering inferiors about as slaves. The fused monarchy and clergy exemplifies the worst excess of feudalism and fanatic theocracy. The largest Kuo-toan cities are ruled by the Vagpulgol, a Kuo-toan term that translates roughly as priest-king, signifying rulership of both the city-state and the clergy of Biblopolop. Attendant priests, nominally known as the Orgpolgopan, or priest-dukes, rule alongside. Small cities are ruled by a Ba-pulgol, or priest-prince, or individual Orgpulgol. Lower-ranking priest-thieves are known as V-plagup. a term that roughly translates as eyes of the priest king, while single-caste priests are known as ba-plagup, or pincers of the priest king. The authority of the clergy nobility is enforced by valskor, or whips, fanatical devotees of the Sea Mother who inspire Kuo-toa warriors to fight without quarter for the glory of their ruler and goddess monitors, members of an elite celibate order who are known as Blib-Sanvu, watch for community members who become violent or insane, subduing or killing them as appropriate. The sacred duty of monitors are clear in the case of commoners who descend into the madness, but the increasing incidence of insanity among the nobility has led to varying interpretations of the teachings of the Sea Mother as their proper fate. The caste system extends to Kuo-toan young, known as fingerlings. Those of normal spawning are raised apart from the common hatchlings and trained as priests. Priests, thieves, or monitors, Kuo-toan slaves are drawn from nearly every surface or subterranean sentient race and make up at least 25% of the total population. While the highest-ranking noble theoretically has absolute authority over all creatures within his territory, the power is tempered by the need to find consensus among the fractious gogglers. In fact, the increasing incident of infighting among the Kuo-toa has done much to undercut the ruler's absolute authority, forcing them to seek alliances with other high-ranking Kuo-toa to ensure continued rule. Nonetheless, given the widespread insanity of a society structured to prevent the removal of those unfit to hold office, many Kuo-toan communities suffer under their leader's madness. Tell me about it. Blib-dul-poop. The Sea Mother is an evil goddess of the elemental plane of water. She is usually depicted as a common human female with the head and claws of a lobster. Her representation may suggest either her origins or her ambitions. Any tradition of wizardly pursuits among the Kuo-toa has long been lost, and magic is concentrated among the clerical elite. As such, while the Kuo-toa have created many magical items and prayers, such manipulations of the weave are governed by Blib-dul-poop ethos. Most domers crafted by the gogglers relate to their ancestral origins in the seas above, and include shells, pearls, coral, and the like as material components. Kuo-toan communities centered around communal pools, a tradition believed to harken back to the race's ancestral residence in the tidal pools of the world above. Pools and channels are used for relaxation, transportation, spawning, and rearing fingerlings. Freestanding buildings are few, as gogglers prefer to employ the central cavern as a community gathering place, market, and temple, with individual residences carved into cavern walls. Some pools are covered with great glass domes, but most are left open. Statues of the Sea Mother are common, especially atop ziggurats, remembrance of those built by the Ixzan. The largest pyramids are typically built in the centers of shallow pools, encircled by great stone steps that serve as both stairs leading down into the pool and great amphitheaters on which the adults of the community can assemble to observe unholy rites. Kuo-toan architecture retains marine elements, with shells and shell designs used throughout and blue-green gems embedded in valuable objects. Kuo-toan artisans labor to embed alien thought patterns in the worlds of such swell motifs. Anyone staring long enough at Kuo-toan architecture is said to risk madness. Kuo-toan range far afield from their settlements and are often encountered in the wild Underdark tunnels. Warrior patrols goaded by whips are frequent near Kuo-toan communities. Pilgrims travel to distant temples of the Sea Mother both to sacrifice and trade with other races. Elite companies of Kuo-toa sometimes travel to the surface world to seize or trade for slaves, sacrifices, shells, and pearls. Gogglers are superb fishermen, diving deeply to gather crabs and fish, and they often cross another race's territory to do so. While gogglers prefer a diet of flesh, they also raise fields of kelp and fungi for food. Such fields, lit by strange phosphorescent fungi, are tended by slaves and Kuo-toan observers. While the Kuo-toa are poor miners, they often employ slaves to mine mineral ores from promising veins. They prize every blue-green gem or pearl discovered, but otherwise gladly part with jewels in exchange for slaves, food, weapons, shells, or pearls. The Kuo-toa also mine seabeds for shells, pearls, and other sacred relics. Kuo-toa hate most other Underdark races and generally loathe all surface dwellers. This feeling is shared by other races, for the Kuo-toa indiscriminately sees others as slaves and or sacrifices. Nonetheless, Goblins willingly trade with most other races who provide useful goods and services, even Drow and humans. Illithids and their allies, however, are attacked on site, and many Kuo-toan communities have running hostilities with neighboring mind flayers, including frequent kidnappings and skirmishes. Svirfneblin. The Svirfneblin, also known as deep gnomes, are deep-dwelling neutral good gnomes. Svirfneblin are slightly smaller than their rock gnome cousins, but their thin, wiry, gnarled frames are just as strong. Svirfneblin have rock-colored skin ranging in hue from medium brown to brownish gray, and their eyes are gray. Male Svirfneblin are completely bald, while female deep gnomes have stringy gray hair. All Svirfneblin have the innate ability to cast blindness, blur, and change self. Deep gnomes radiate non-detection, have superior infravision, and possess natural detection abilities regarding stonework. Svirfneblin have some amount of magic resistance. Many elite deep gnomes have skill with illusions, while others can summon earth elementals to serve them. While some non-gnome sages claim that the Forgotten Folk are the creation of Nethresis Arcanus seeking to create a race of perfect servants, careful scholars note the existence of gnome artifacts long before the appearance of the Forgotten Folk during the Silver Age of Netheril. Gnome folklore holds that the first gnomes were born from gems discovered by Garl Glithergold, the head of the gnome pantheon, in a fashion similar to that ascribed to the gods themselves. The watchful protector discovered a sealed cavern whose walls and ceilings were studded with countless gems and veins of valuable ore. After Garl polished the gems and breathed on them, the jewels opened up to release the first gnomes. Before leading them into the world, Garl bequeathed laughter and mischievousness to the newly born race by telling them a joke from his endless stock. Those who were born of diamonds dwelt beneath the surface and became rock gnomes. Those born of emeralds dwelt amid the great trees and became forest gnomes, and those born of rubies wandered deep into the heart of the earth and became Svirfneblin. Deep gnomes have long dwelt in the upper and middle reaches of the Underdark, wherever veins of gemstones, particularly rubies, are found. While deep gnomes have never dominated vast swaths of the Underdark, they are difficult to dislodge and can dwell in a close proximity to rival enclaves of mutually hostile races without being driven out or enslaved. Most Svirfneblin live beneath northern Faerun, particularly in the vicinity of the buried realms beneath Anarok, although not directly under the Great Sand Sea. Svirfneblin maintain strong family and clan relationships. Deep gnome clans are more closely allied and less structured than their dwarven equivalents. Like the stout folk, Svirfneblin are traditionally ruled by hereditary monarchies. Although deep gnomes have not been forced to abandon this form of governance as quickly as the stout folk, Svirfneblin kings rule primarily through consensus. With the advice of a council of elders, Svirfneblin communities are largely self-governing, for deep gnomes feel strong loyalty to their kinfolk and a keen sense of duty to their community. In the wilds, respected and powerful burrow wardens work to ensure the safe return of deep gnome mining and trading parties who braved the dangers of the Underdark to acquire prized gems and jewels. Deep gnomes worship Caladoran, smooth hands, first and foremost, but they venerate the entire gnome pantheon, including Barvan, Wildwander, Baravar, Cloak Shadow, Flandel, Steelskin, Garadol, Ironhand, Garl, Glittergold, Neblun, Segerjon, Earthcaller, and by nature and the threat he embodies, Erdelin. Both Svirfneblin priests and wizards are particularly skilled in magic relating to illusion, earth, and stone. Svirfneblin are believed to have developed a powerful method of spellcasting related to rubies and other gems. But details are even scarcer than for dwarven runecasters. Svirfneblin dwell in great cities of closely connected tunnels, buildings, and caverns. Such cities are often carved out of solid bedrock by intrepid deep-gnome miners, and access to communities is restricted to highly guarded entrances and exits. Deep gnomes, like dwarfs, exploit three-dimensional spaces and rarely think in terms of flat topography. Their burrows tend to be simple structures with a small number of rooms and open windows to the city at large. While some Svirfneblin communities favor smooth stone and rectangular constructions, others favor abstract designs with rounded corners and undulating patterns in the rock face, not unlike hardened clay. Although Svirfneblin actively patrol their domains with well-armed and armored bands of warriors led by burrow wardens and accompanied by one or more illusionists, such military activity is less common than that of dwarves or drow. The deep gnomes trust more in their defensive fortifications than they do other races. Although a deep gnome's community usually constructs its enclave in its first worked-out mine, it quickly leaves a tapped mine behind. As such, Svirfneblin communities are typically surrounded by a number of worked-out mines. Like dwarves, the Forgotten Folk leave far less evidence of their diggings than do the various mining surface races. Svirfneblin prize stealth, cleverness, and tenacity as skills that enable them to thrive in the Underdark. As a result, deep gnomes have little liking for the cruel societies prevalent throughout the Underdark, and they harbor hatred for Drow, Illithids, and Kuo-toa. Nevertheless, deep gnomes trade both information and goods with other races, particularly those with extensive trading networks such as the Drow. Svirfneblin do forge strong alliances with shield dwarfs in some situations, but such relationships are instantly fraught with tension as both races are naturally suspicious.
Anguiliians. Anguiliians are deep-dwelling, lawful, evil relatives of the Sahuagin, resembling a cross between a man and an eel. While most Anguiliians live in the sunless depths of the ocean, few have made their way into the flood tunnels of the Underdark that open to the abyssal trenches of the Sea of Fallen Stars and the depths of the outer oceans. Bainligor. The Bainligor are small, flightless bat people of neutral evil alignment who undergo a series of magical transformations as they age. Bainligors are a primitive tribal culture and are found in the southern reaches of the upper Underdark, particularly beneath the Chultan Peninsula. Elder Bainligor are undead creatures known as revered ones. Legends speak of deep tribes composed of only revered ones who hunt in the great packs through the deeper reaches of the Underdark. Bi-Nou. The Bi-Nou are living rocks believed to have been created by the Drow in ages past. These animated craggy columns are of chaotic evil alignment and live in damp, drafty caverns in the northwestern reaches of the upper Underdark in small family groups. The Bi-Nou have been known to ally with the Drow and are sometimes hunted by the Duergar as building materials. Close relatives of the Bi-Nou include rockworms and rock lords, the latter also known as Lords of Stone, both of whom appear as stone snakes with arms. Blue ring octopi. Blue ring octopi are very intelligent, shy, neutral good octopi who dwell in the cracks and crevices of the Underdark's oceans and constantly struggle to escape notice of the more powerful aquatic races because they taste like calamari. Blue ring octopi are covered with hundreds of blue circles, have large golden eye and a greenish-brown beak, and can exchange their skin color similar to other species of octopi in surface saltwater oceans. A few blue ring octopi have rings of ox blood red. These red shamans can cast pre-spells, although no one knows what deity they venerate. Chitines. Chitines are another race believed to have been created by the Drow. These small, four-armed, web-spinning, chaotic, evil humanoids resemble a cross between humans and the shit nightmares are made of, giant spiders. Chitines venerate Loth, but plot to overthrow the Drow. They are found in small numbers in the northern reaches of the upper and middle Underdark, with the greatest concentration located in the general vicinity of the Drow city of Chetnasad, hinting towards the source of their ancestry. Caldrith are Chitine priestesses. They are completely hairless with dark charcoal gray skin. Larger than their kindred, they have smaller, almost negligible mandibles. The silver-white eyes of Chitine priestesses are not multifaceted, and they have long, pointed ears resembling horns. Drow are neutral, evil genies native to the elemental plane of Earth, who sometimes establish settlements in the realms below. Drow are fierce opponents of the Dwarves, Petch, and the Thalud, and they often battle those races over particularly valuable veins of ore and gems. Drow exist in small numbers throughout the Underdark, but most sightings are concentrated in the upper and middle Underdark, beneath the southwestern corner of Faerun. Dark Creepers are closely related governing subrace known as Darkstalkers, are chaotic neutral humanoids. They live in small villages throughout the upper and middle Underdark, south of the Sea of Fallen Stars and east of the Shining Sea. Dark Creepers are believed to subsist by consuming magic and may draw their nourishment in part from the pockets of radiation found throughout the Underdark. Given that the Drow and other powerful races compete for the control of such sites, it's no wonder that Dark Creepers are more a nuisance than a threat. Dire Corbies. Dire Corbies are huge, black, bipedal bird, common in the southern reaches of the upper Underdark, believed to have descended from the avian creator race that also spawned the Aarakocra. These neutral evil subterranean birdmen were driven nearly to extinction in a century-long war with giant bats. Dopplegangers. Although most commonly found in the lands of light, small groups of these neutral shapeshifters are found throughout the realms below, acting as parasites on more powerful Underdark races. Greater doppelgangers, neutral evil kin of their lesser brethren, live primarily in the northwestern Underdark in the vicinity of Waterdeep, although it is not known if there is a link between the subspecies of the City of Splendors.
Hello, my friends. Dragons. The magnificent worms who soar through the skies of Faerun are also in the tunnels beneath, particularly in the upper Underdark. Deep dragons, sapphire dragons, and shadow dragons are the most commonly encountered breeds. But black dragons, bronze dragons, gold dragons, mist dragons, white dragons, and rarer breeds also turn up. Deep dragons are the most commonly encountered in the upper and middle Underdark near Drow cities. Sapphire dragons are most often encountered in the middle Underdark, far from the enclaves of other dragons, Aboleth, Drow, Dwarves, and Illithid, all of whom they fiercely fight for territory. Shadow dragons are most often encountered in the deepest reaches of the lower Underdark, where lies and ties to the demi-plane of shadow are strongest. More than one Dragolich, created by the cult of the dragon, has retreated into the Underdark to escape its masters and to escape the wrath of Mad Dog Jalapeno and Coco. The followers of the Scaly Way have begun to approach deep-dwelling worms with word of Sam Master's teachings. Thank you, my friends. Gaunds. Gaunds are gray-green reptilian creatures of neutral alignment with 3 glowing eyes. Distantly related to troglodytes and lizardmen, they are believed to be descendants of the sauroid creator race. Although sentient, Gaunds resemble large lizards and spend most of their time on all fours. They are omnivores who dwell in small colonies in dry, fiery caverns. Gaunds are most prevalent in the vicinity of volcanic activity and are typically found in the upper reaches of the Underdark near active volcanoes. Gaunds are still found in sizable numbers beneath the smoking mountains and black ash plain of southern Unther. But the once populated colonies in the Lake of Steam region have been driven to near extinction by the beholders of the Alamir Hive and Drow of Gondoruth. Giants. Reminiscent of the humongous humans, two breeds of giants are commonly found in the Underdark. Fomorians are grossly deformed humanoid behemoths. This neutral evil giant subspecies sometimes lurks in mountainous regions of the surface world, but most Fomorians have been driven into the lightless tunnels of the Underdark. Clans of Fomorian giants are found primarily in the northern upper Underdark beneath the great mountain ranges. Stone giants are muscular behemoths with smooth, gray, hairless flesh and a great affinity for stone. While most of these neutral giants dwell in the great mountain ranges of Faerun, many tribes now dwell in the upper reaches of the Underdark, particularly in the south and the east. Gibberlings. Gibberlings are small, pale, hunchback humanoids of chaotic neutral alignment with canine ears, black manes, black, shining eyes, overly long arms, and hideous, grinning faces. Found throughout the upper reaches of the Underdark, these carnivores madly swarm and attack any living creature they encounter. Gibberlings have no discernible social structure, and their numbers fluctuate wildly. Some sages believe that Gibberlings are unfortunate humans and demi-humans transformed by Drow sorcerers. Glouras. Glouras are small fairies of neutral alignment associated with the Unseelie Court. Found throughout the upper reaches of the Underdark, they have huge, moth-like wings, long fingers, sharp claws, and a mass of dark claws. Although some believe the Glouras to be messengers of Alestri, the Dark Maiden, that seems unlikely, given their ties to the Queen of Air and Darkness. Goblins. Although the various races of goblins are most commonly in the Lands of Light, numerous tribes have been driven into the upper reaches of the Underdark and then been enslaved by the various races that dwell below. Goblins are small, lawful, evil humanoids with flat faces, broad noses, pointy ears, wide mouths, and small, short fangs. Bugbears are giant, hairy, chaotic, evil cousins of goblins. Hobgoblins are lawful, evil, bulky humanoids with hairy hides ranging from dark reddish-brown to dark gray. Coloniths are a marine variety of hobgoblins with gills, webbed fingers, and webbed toes. Norkers resemble their hobgoblin cousins but are chaotic evil. They are hairless, have tough, leathery skin, and have two large canines protruding from their upper lips. While bugbears, goblins, and norkers are relatively common throughout the realms below, hobgoblins, coloniths are rarer for reasons yet not understood. Grell. Grell are fearsome, neutral, evil carnivores resembling giant brains with vicious beaks and 10 dangling tentacles. Like beholders, Grell are believed to have reached Aberl on great spell-jamming ships before making their way into the upper reaches of the Underdark. Particularly in the northeastern reaches of Faerun, while a few Grell are solitary rogues, the majority dwell with their fellows in small cavern complexes, hunting the surrounding territories till they are exhausted of prey and then moving on. Grell communities are known as hives, and members of such enclaves are divided into 3 castes: workers, soldiers, philosophers, and patriarchs. Gremlins. Gremlins are small goblinoids, often mistaken for imps. 3 varieties of gremlin make their home in the upper underreaches of the Underdark: neutral evil germlines, lawful evil mites, and neutral synods. Most gremlins dwell in small family groups, opportunistically preying on unwary travelers in the upper Underdark. Gremlins typically lair in a maze of tiny chambers and passageways along major trade routes. While most other races exterminate them if given the opportunity, gremlins are amazingly resilient and nigh impossible to completely eliminate. And don't feed them after midnight. or get them wet. Grimlocks. Grimlocks are powerfully built neutral evil humanoids in the northern and central reaches of the upper Underdark near caverns that open in the mountainous regions above. Grimlocks have thick, scaly gray skin and long, black, filthy hair. Their teeth are white and extremely sharp, and their eyes are blank white orbs. Tales speak of tribes of primitive humans who dwelt overlong in the tunnels of the Underdark, and Grimlocks are said to be their descendants. Kobolds. Kobolds are short, lawful evil humanoids with scaly hides that range from dark rusty brown to rusty black, and non-prehensile rat-like tails. Although kobolds are little more than pests in the realm above, competing with gnomes for food and living space, in the Underdark they are a major threat. Kobolds can quickly strip a region of resources if their numbers remain unchecked. The more powerful races of the Underdark enslave many kobolds. They are used primarily as frontline troops in the initial skirmishes of any war. Urds, relatives of kobolds with leathery, bat-like wings, are largely unknown in the Underdark. A few tribes were once found dwelling in great chasms beneath the earth, but most have fallen victim to more powerful competitors such as Cloakers and Beholders. Mongrelmen. Mongrelmen are grotesque, lawful, neutral humanoids between 5 and 7 feet tall. No two look alike, since all Mongrelmen descend from wildly mixed racial stock, including bugbear, bullywug, dwarf, elf, gnoll, hobgoblin, human, ogre, and orc blood, among others. They are ashamed of their appearance and usually try to conceal their bodies from strangers, excelling at theft and camouflage. Mongrelmen congregate in ruins of small shanty towns. In the Underdark, they live near the surface where they can move more easily, scavenge or steal materials for their communities. The underground settlements usually connect to the surface in numerous places, providing easy escape. However, the Underdark is so filled with danger that despite the creature's best effort, Mongrelmen settlements are usually short-lived affairs, attacked by hungry monsters or slave traders before they have much time to establish themselves. Survival is the greatest goal of Mongrelmen, and patience is their strongest suit. As a result, many that are taken into slavery remain there calmly until freed by outside forces. Though patient and generally peaceful, they are capable of violence for self-defense and when ordered by their masters to attack. Mongrelmen music and language consist of animalistic grunts and howls, although a pigeon common can be detected behind the animal cries. Orcs. Orcs are lawful evil humanoids with gray or green skin, coarse hair, a slightly sloped posture, a low, jutted forehead, canine teeth, and a snout instead of a nose. Despite their prevalence across Faerun, particularly in the abandoned dwarf holds of the north, orcs are far less common in the Underdark than one might expect. However, neutral evil or Quaggoth crossbreeds known as Boggans are growing in number throughout the upper reaches of the far northern Underdark, as well as beneath the great forest of Comathir. Since the destruction of the Hellgate Keep, a new breed of chaotic evil tiefling orcs, known as Tanaruka, have been growing in number in the upper reaches of the Underdark, west of the Buried Realms, beneath Anaruk, in the tunnels once claimed by the dwarfs of Amerdar. Peck, also known as Rock Children, Metal, are a race of small, neutral good humanoids from the elemental plane of Earth. They sometimes make their way into the deepest reaches of the lower Underdark to mine rich veins of ore and work the surrounding stone. They are very thin, with long arms and legs and broad hands and feet. Their flesh is nearly as hard as granite, colored pale and yellowish with red or reddish-brown hair. Their eyes are large and have no pupils. Peck are often with Dow, the various dwarven races, and the Thalud for raw materials, but these elemental earthkin are otherwise left alone by the other races they encounter. Phazrim. Phazrim are a race of powerful sorcerers whose mastery of the art is sufficient to rival that of the Chosen of Mystra. They resemble upright cones, their widest part uppermost, and the point ending in a barbed stinger tail. Phazrim are largely responsible for the fall of Nethril and the spread of Anaruk to cover once fertile land. The efforts of the Sharn confined the Fazarim beneath Anaruk. Although a few individuals are believed to have escaped the magical prison confining the rest of the race, or perhaps were caught outside the barrier when it was erected, rumors of Fazarin activity involve both the Twisted Rune and the runes of the myth Draenor.
Quaggoths, also known as deep bears, are powerful, neutral humanoids resembling bears with long, shaggy white hair covering their entire bodies.
Although many Quaggoths are enslaved by the Drows guards and spider handlers,
free-roaming bands of nomadic hunters still exist.
Quaggoth tribes are most
Quaggoth
common in the far northern reaches of the upper Underdark.
Although Drow slave traders have spread small groups throughout the upper and middle Underdark.
Some sages claim that Quaggoths were once a semi-civilized race that dominated the Underdark through conquest and ritual sacrifice until the Drow, Duergar, and other interloper races broke their power. Others speculate they had some sort of surface civilization but were driven underground by surface-dwelling dwarves and elves.
Ropers. Ropers resemble pillar-shaped rock outcroppings with a single yellow eye, a carnivorous maw ringed with sharp teeth and small bumps covering their bodies. Each bump can shoot out strong, sticky strands. Although most ropers hunt alone, throughout the Underdark, clusters of ropers have been seen in certain caverns along well-traveled tunnels in the northern and central reaches of the upper Underdark. Roper relatives include Storopers, which have a stonier, less flexible exterior, and tentacles that are always extended at least 20 feet. Garropers, giant ropers with magical powers believed to serve the dark power Gundadar, and Euroropers, Illithid roper crossbreeds.
Sharn are curious, chaotic, neutral creatures who appear as glossy, black teardrops of amorphous flesh, studded with many tiny eyes and surrounded by a nimbus of purple light. Some Sharn are powerful spellcasters, and all can create miniature ethereal windows through which they can extend one of their 3 tri-handed arms, one of their 3 fanged maws. Sham dwell with other members of their large families or clans throughout the upper reaches of the Underdark, particularly in the North Dark. This mysterious, whimsical, spellcasting race is sometimes encountered in the great dungeon of the Undermountain. Some believe the Sharn to have imprisoned the Farim in the buried realms beneath the Great Sand Sea, where they constantly guard against the efforts of the Farim to shatter their magical prison. Skulks. Skulks are cowardly, chaotic, evil race of humanoids with the chameleon-like ability to blend into any background. Skulks resemble completely hairless humans. They are elf-like in stature, with graceful limbs, soft facial features, and pink eyes, but their ears are not pointed. Skulks are fairly common in the upper and middle reaches of the Underdark beneath Khalzum, Tenir, and the Land of the Lions, and the Lake of Steam. They are believed to be descendants of human slaves in the Drow city of Gwalendorth, who were led to freedom by an avatar of Imbrandul, the skulking god, and then transformed into their current state. Thalud, also known as tomb tappers, for their habit of burrowing up to plunder tombs and temples. Thalud appear as tall, naked, sexless, hairless humanoids with hard, smooth, blue-gray skin. Their claws can dig through solid rock, and great toothed mouths sit in their bellies. Their featureless heads earned them the nickname the Faceless. Thalud turned to stone when slain, leading sages to believe they were created originally from rock. They hold both magic and earth elementals to be sacred and are very long-lived. Tomb tappers were created during the shadowed age of Nethril to seek the source of the drain on magic that was spreading across the land. Thalud are found in the northern reaches of the upper and middle Underdark, particularly in and around the buried realms beneath Anaruk. Thalud will aid Svirfneblin and dwarfs. They dislike Drow and Duergar, hate Umber and sometimes enslaving them at birth, mutually ignore Zorn, and are bitter foes of Illithids and the Farim. Troglodytes. Troglodytes are a warlike race of carnivorous reptilian humanoids who dwell in natural subterranean caverns in the upper reaches of the Underdark. Particularly in the south, they stand about 6 feet tall, covered in roughened leather scales, and have a toothy lizard-like head. Troglodytes are natural chameleons, but grayish-brown is the most common skin color. Troglodytes secrete an oil that saps strength from humans and demi-humans. These evil, chaotic lizards are believed to be descendants of the Sauryard creator race. Once spread throughout the realms below, they have gradually been supplanted by more vigorous and powerful races and are now a minor power. Tren are a chaotic evil crossbreed of troglodytes with the largest, strongest, vilest members of the lizardman race. Tren, who live in loose-knit clans, hate all warm-blooded creatures, but reserve special animosity for dwarves who often fight them for subterranean water supplies. While not numerous anywhere, Tren are most commonly found in the upper reaches of the Underdark, beneath the Maher and Black jungles. And lastly, the Vankar. Vankar are brutal subterranean lawful evil lizardmen dwelling in close-knit tribes in the moist caverns in the deepest reaches of the lower Underdark. Vankar are skilled hunters with large, photosensitive eyes set on the sides of their heads. Much like frogs, they possess a connective layer of webbing beneath their armpits that facilitates swimming in underground lakes and rivers. Thank you for joining us for this extensive look into Drizzt Do'Urden's Guide to the Underdark. You've been here with us through the introduction, Drizzt's survival guide, his Underdark civilizations of the Aboleth, Beholders, Cloakers, Drow, Dwarves, Illithids, Ixzan, Kuo-toa, Svirfneblin, and then all these other races here at the end. We're going to soon get around to the northern, central, and southern cities. Stay frosty and aware, beautiful people. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please smack that subscribe and assault that like button. And we'll get back to you real soon with some more monstery goodness. Until then, stay frosty and aware, beautiful people. Thank you. Thank you very much.